Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Bro, what the f was that? Now that Final Fantasy VII has released for PC users worldwide, it got me wondering, first of all, what on earth the modding community will be up to with certain characters in the game, but also if the game was as good as people said it was, because oh my goodness gracious great balls of fire. This game received pretty much every Game of the Year award and gaming accolade that Metaphor ReFantasio or Wukong Violent Monkey with a staff didn't get. I originally played the game when it first came out on the PS5 last year, and honestly was left with this odd feeling of missing out or not receiving all the hype and praise that this game got at the time, and ended up dropping it for a good period in all honesty because it just didn't click for me. But now after months of thinking about it, I did what any sane RPG or JRPG fan would do and replayed the whole freaking game from scratch. Think about it as a kind of rebirth of interest. Rebirth. And moving on. Look, in all honesty, I just saw new trailers of the game and got hyped to the next level, to the point where I wanted to see if the feeling I got from this game originally repeated itself, or if in fact I was missing the point that warrants all the 40 freaking Game of the Year awards. So subscribe if you're new, and let's get into whatever the Final Fantasy VII Rebirth was, and if you should in fact be playing it. Now, starting things off, I do want to address the elephant in the room, and no, I still don't think that this game is the Game of the Year, because well, there are things here that make it feel more like a kind of extended trip down memory lane for some gamers out there. Some of you may already know the original Final Fantasy VII was split into 3 parts, with Rebirth being the middle child of sorts, who undoubtedly always gets treated a bit differently. And that's really very evident in the 2 million sales numbers that this game sold in the last year. Look, that's not a bad number to hit in all honesty, but compare that to the 7 million that Remake made, there's a stark difference there. But admittedly, look, Integrate, Retrograde, whatever the grade it's called, that got released on multiple platforms later on with the DLC, so more people bought that and that kind of boosted the numbers. So, but you're not here to talk about sales numbers and all of that jazz, broski. You're here to wrap your head around the experience that was Final Fantasy Rebirth. And I do openly have to admit, man, there are some absolute peak level highs in this game at times. I can't even imagine what it must have felt like for OG players playing this game again and to see so much more that the original experience had in it. But for me, for the kind of first time indulger, if you will, the amount of content here, man, just mind-bogglingly high. And I do hope that's a real word. This I found to be both a good thing overall because there's some really top level content here. The boss fights are epic to say the very least, and everything around the combat system I did overall enjoy quite a bit, apart from maybe the summons feeling a bit underwhelming at times. Also, I gotta be honest, man, the compadre combo system, look, I tried for 60-70 plus hours, however many hours I've played this game to date. I tried so hard to get my head around that system, or actually just integrate it into my combo rotations, and I just couldn't. I upgraded the path to get all of them, or most of them. I just didn't use any of them, to be honest. This does kind of segue me into the next thing, which is the overall feeling, man, that the game maybe tries to do too much at times, if that makes any sense, and I hope that does. But for example, there were a few moments in the game where the fate of the freaking world is in the balance, and instead of saving it, you decide to follow a random dog around the Gangagaga jungles in the hunt for mushrooms and salt to make a freaking soup that brings you no real value apart from watching a cutscene of 3 characters being just lightheartedly clumsy and funny. Like these same characters weren't just on the brink of death trying to stop a mass-killing maniac with a sword. Also, on a side note, this little sword, man, is so long that Sephiroth for sure poked someone unintentionally, either himself or somebody close to him. Admittedly, no one really gets close to Sephiroth, but also that brings me on this side rant. Where does he put his sword? Does he just carry it around on his hand, on his person? There's no sheath, he can't sheath it anywhere. Even when he gets back to his home, his 1-bedroom apartment, does he just put it up across against the wall? Like in the corner of the room? It's a long katana, like he's gonna have to have one of those high ceiling houses. Or does he just put it on the hallway? If he has a long hallway, just... I'm stuck wondering this fact. This is a weird fact. No one's really answered this. Is it in the lore books? Now maybe I am getting lost in my own imagination and losing the original point that there was to be made here. But the pacing of the game, man, it seems just very off at times. And by that, I mean it's just all over the place. On one hand, the game does push you forward to complete the story and progress in this darker tone of a plot. But simultaneously, you get constantly bombarded with minigames and side content that maybe falls more on the comedic side. And is somewhat tedious in all honesty, because what starts off as having fun and clearing the map of markers does end up just being repetitive actions and somewhat meh experiences, because all the different maps you visit, while look awesome in themselves admittedly, are just glorified corridors that are really just filled with markers to tick. And I say tedium because around the final third-ish of the game, there was a surprising spike in the difficulty level, and it kind of forced me to at least go back a ways way and grind some more levels, which yeah, and farming through these levels really made it feel like one of the latter Far Cry games, or games like that where the open world, or in this case semi-open world, serves no other purpose apart from ticking boxes and stat padding your playtime, of course, to show your friends later on. Like we all go through our gaming libraries at some point in time, looking at the hours that you've spent wasted on certain games. I'm looking at you, Rocket League. But then you just take screenshots and send them to your friends. I can't be the only one who's done that. Please let me not be the only one who's done that. Anyway, thankfully the different chocobos were cool, the mechanics around them were okay cool, as well as the other modes of transportation, and playing Queen's Blood, man, I love that game. It just never gets old for me. But also because of uncovering the surprisingly eerie story behind Queen's Blood, that was a treat. As a matter of fact, all the other actual side content in the game were cool in general to experience, but more often than not, man, to get to the climax of sorts of these side stories, you have to go through, like I said, a bunch of repetitive objectives and steps that feel like a walk through knee-deep mud, if that makes any sense, and I'm not gonna bullshit you on that. There are also things in the game that felt more like an afterthought than anything, really. Like for example, the bonding system of the game, which serves a cool purpose. I mean, ultimately it just gives you an extra date with a certain character, but that was a bit weird as well, because I gotta be honest, man, I spent 3/4 of the game rizzing up Tifa up the waz. I tried all of that stuff, man. But then, who wakes me up of all the people in the game? Aerith. Aerith wakes me up and takes me out on the date, the dating stuff that you do in the cutscene. What? Of all the people that I got a friend zone, it's gotta be Aerith. Why? Why, honestly? Another thing that also felt like an afterthought was the companion combo system, like I mentioned earlier, because I just couldn't get it, broski. As well as just some other things, like some mini games where there's picking of mushrooms or throwing boxes or doing sit-ups against the most Chad looking dudes out there. Like some of them admittedly were fun. The sit-up stuff, that was fun. But like I mentioned earlier, man, in regards to pacing, I don't want to be doing sit-ups for XP to level up my character so that I can go lose to Rufus for the freaking thousandth time. Because again, let's not forget that the fate of humanity is at stake here. Now I know I am being a bit harsh on the RP side of this game. That was an issue for me personally that I really had to overcome, because overall sometimes it feels like the things just don't mesh together. The stuff in this game, the different systems, the different mini games, all of that, they just don't mesh together to have this cohesive experience. It's a bit patchy. But also, as I criticize parts of the game in terms of immersion, I do have to still admit that I love parts of this game. The other parts, the better parts, man, they are awesome. Like, they are one of a kind in terms of fun factor. This is a memorable game to play, even while doing the gazillion freaking mini games that I never really got frustrated or annoyed at doing. Some of the bosses, while also being bullshit, and I'm looking at you, Rufus, Shinra, also got me to just get good at the game, track back and kind of rehearse my combo rotations and all of that. And I do have to give the game credit for that, because sometimes, man, the highs are so high in this game, and I'd love it for that. That does ultimately bring us to the ever so loved, the ever so hyped, and the ever so imaginary rating system that I have created to kind of keep track of games I would recommend. So if you're new here, I rate games on a 3-tier list system of day one buys, maybe waits, or only fans, pun intended. Now this game, with all the highs that there are in this game and the experience that there is here, which is like 60+ hours, it's still a maybe wait for me, only because I don't have the nostalgia glasses on when playing this game. I feel like for OG fans, this is more of a day one buy, while for newcomers to the series, it's a great game. But is it worth the 70 freaking bucks or however many bucks it costs to buy this game? Probably not. I'll be honest, I'm very stingy with that, so probably not for me. But for the people who enjoyed the OG Final Fantasy games, as well as people who enjoyed remake in general, this is a no-brainer in terms of actually playing it at some point. If you did get it day one, then I'm sure you enjoyed it. If not, then well, that's your problem to have, of course. Ultimate question is, does this game deserve the Game of the Year award? How the f should I know, broski? I'm just a gamer on the internet telling you that I like this game and would hope that more people would talk about it. I mean, 2 million sales, plenty of people have talked about it, but I do want to hear your comments nonetheless in the comments down below, my broski. Let me know what you thought of this game, if the game was good enough or it was just like 60 plus hours of filler when you look at the whole time frame of Final Fantasy VII in terms of actual meat of the game. Also, if you haven't subscribed already, now is the perfect time to do so. We are this close to 1K. We're so close. So if you want to be on the train to the greatness of the tubes and be one of the OGs on this channel, then man, subscribe to the channel. Do all that YouTube jazz, of course. I hope you guys have a great day wherever you're from, whichever time of day you watch this ad. I don't really know how to end this video, so enjoy the meme in the outro. In the meanwhile, click this video, click that video. I hope I'm pointing towards the right direction. I've been your broski. Keep on trucking my dudes. Peace.